Hi, I'm Karcher Goldmam, and I will be informing about nuclear energy, both fission and fusion, as those are the two types. Now, for starters, fission is carbon neutral and so is fusion, but the building cost of both of them is high in carbon because the massive amount of concrete and other materials that are used during construction. After this construction, which is time consuming in one manner and resource consuming in another, there is much less resource use and no carbon emission. Now, that is the main attraction to nuclear, especially fission as we have it currently. Now, these fission reactors, they create much more energy and much more reliably than other renewable resources such as wind and solar. Nuclear, for example, the energy grid as we know it currently is based off of a baseline of coal. And then during peak hours, we use solar, hydro, wind, geothermal, and other sources for the power spikes during the day, like when everyone wakes up and turns on their daily news channel or watches YouTube while they eat or go to bed or listens to music for that fact. And so if we are going for a truly carbon neutral world, nuclear is going to be an amazing baseline for this. Now, with nuclear's strong production, there is waste that comes with it. Now, this waste is very scary to many people, but we handle it in a proper way. We have the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of the United States, to help us with this. They have set guidelines and regulations. One guideline says, after a fuel rod is spent, we should contain it for at least 3 years. And then, after those 3 years, we can put it into a dry casket. Now, they are initially stored in spent fuel rod pools. And as custom follows, we don't just put them there for 3 years and get going ASAP, as some companies would. No, we leave them there for 10 years and then about another 20 to 30 in the dry caskets, just for safety purpose, just in case. And then after this, and sometimes even before, we can repurpose these rods. We can use them again in the nuclear reactor after we reprocess them. And this reprocessing allows us to extend the life of this fuel and use it much more often and much more continuously, as nuclear reactors are almost always used continuously. Now, nuclear waste also comes in another form. This is low level and this is mostly negligible. This negligible form is like wrappers and other things that have just been contaminated by radiation, perhaps by chance or slight mistake, miscalculation. These can usually just be treated as regular garbage after about 1 year, sometimes even less. And so that is very negligible and many people don't cover that. Now, disasters like Chernobyl, Fukushima, and 3 Mile Island, they have their own cleanup processes. We have heard of the cleanup processes in Chernobyl with the big casket encapsulating the whole reactor plant that has been moved. It's the world's largest moving structure, actually. And also, Chernobyl is one of the deadliest nuclear accidents, whereas Fukushima and 3 Mile Island are very mild in their nature when compared to Chernobyl, although they are all of the highest tier, the worst of the worst, one may say. Now, Fukushima was subject to an unfortunate tsunami, and the waste following Fukushima has been stored in spent fuel rod pools outside. And we are currently still handling it. They are still sitting in those pools, cooling down and living out their half-lives. And some Japanese regulatory committees are even proposing that we dump them because they are way past their expected lifetime where they would still be harmful to us and other species. They are now capable to be exposed of into the environment without harm. And then 3 Mile Island, it has had the least amount of cleanup out of the three because it's not as needed. It was a coolant malfunction that caused this meltdown, and that was only reactor 2. Reactor 1 still remains one of the most productive reactors in that area. And there are also other projects that lead into fusion energy, like ITER, international collaboration between China, Russia, Britain, France, US, Germany, and many other NATO and nations. And then there's MIT, we all know them, our tech giant university. They got a grant from the US government to build their own reactor. Then there's the K-Star reactor in South Korea. This is also built by a Korean university. It can maintain nuclear fusion at 100 million degrees for 20 seconds straight. This is a world record and the closest we've ever been to productive and efficient fusion. And that concludes my informative speech on nuclear reactors.